If the Galactic Empire had never fallen, the galaxy would have faced a future of relentless authoritarian control and the crushing of all hope for freedom. The pivotal events at the Battle of Endor would have unfolded quite differently had Grand Admiral Thrawn been present aboard the Executor, commanding Death Squadron with his unmatched strategic genius. In this alternate timeline, the Rebel Alliance would have been annihilated, setting the stage for an unbroken era of Imperial dominance. Thrawn's presence at Endor would have radically altered the course of the battle. Unlike the complacent Imperial officers who underestimated the rebels, Thrawn's deep understanding of his enemy's tactics and psychology would have given the Empire a decisive advantage. The rebel fleet, despite its bravery and ingenuity, would have been no match for the coordinated and calculated assault orchestrated by Thrawn. Each maneuver by the rebels would have been anticipated and countered with devastating precision. The Millennium Falcon and the fighter squadrons attempting to infiltrate the Death Star I would have been intercepted and obliterated. With the Executor and the rest of Death Squadron under Thrawn's direct command, the rebel fleet would have been systematically dismantled. Thrawn's leadership would have ensured that the Death Star I remained operational, its super laser employed to annihilate entire rebel capital ships. The iconic heroes of the rebellion, Admiral Akbar, Lando Calrissian, and others would have perished in the chaos, their loss symbolizing the end of the rebel cause. Meanwhile, aboard the Death Star Luke Skywalker would have confronted Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine in the throne room. However, in this scenario, the outcome of their confrontation would have diverged drastically from what is known. Luke, struggling with his anger and the dark side's pull, would have succumbed to his emotions. In a fit of rage, he would have struck down his father, Darth Vader, killing him in the heat of their duel. This act, driven by anger and despair, would have sealed Luke's fall to the dark side. Emperor Palpatine, ever the master manipulator, would have seized this moment to mold Luke into his new apprentice. With Vader gone, Luke would have become the perfect enforcer for the Empire, young, powerful, and untainted by the physical limitations that had hindered Vader. Palpatine's plan to corrupt Luke would have come to fruition, ensuring that the Sith legacy endured through the galaxy's most promising Force wielder. The destruction of the rebel fleet at Endor would have shattered the Alliance's remaining forces, leaving the galaxy without a rallying point for resistance. Palpatine's control over the galaxy would have been solidified, with Thrawn and his unmatched strategic brilliance ensuring that no system dared rise against the Empire. The Outer Rim territories, long resistant to centralized authority, would have been brought under Imperial control through Thrawn's calculated campaigns. His ability to study and exploit the cultural and psychological nuances of alien civilizations would have rendered even the most rebellious systems compliant. Coruscant, the Imperial capital, would have remained the epicenter of power and control. With the Imperial Senate long since dissolved, the galaxy would have been governed directly through the Emperor's will and the efficient machinery of Thrawn's administration. Propaganda would have been pervasive, glorifying the Empire's might and vilifying the ideals of rebellion. Entire generations would have been raised in a galaxy where resistance was synonymous with futility, and the Sith were regarded as unchallengeable rulers. Luke Skywalker's fall to the dark side would have carried profound consequences for the galaxy. As Darth Sidious's new apprentice, Luke would have embraced his role as a Sith Lord, wielding his power to crush any opposition to the Empire. His former allies Leia, Han Solo, and others would have been casualties of the war, leaving Luke isolated and fully immersed in the dark side. His transformation would have been complete, marking him as a symbol of the Empire's unassailable power. Palpatine, ever the schemer, would have used Luke to enforce his will across the galaxy, deploying him to destroy any remnants of the Rebel Alliance and quell insurrections with ruthless efficiency. The sight of Luke Skywalker, the former hope of the rebellion, now wielding a crimson lightsaber and fighting for the Empire, would have been a demoralizing blow to anyone still harboring dreams of freedom. Thrawn's influence on the galaxy would have extended beyond military conquest. His leadership would have brought a level of order and efficiency to the Empire that had been absent under the chaotic rule of other Imperial officers. However, his vision of order, while effective, would have come at the cost of individuality and freedom. The galaxy, though stable, would have been a cold and oppressive place, devoid of the vibrancy and diversity that had once defined it. The Jedi Order, already decimated by Order 66, would have been extinguished entirely. Luke, as a Sith Lord, would have ensured that no new Jedi could rise to challenge the Empire. The teachings of the Jedi would have been erased from the galaxy's collective memory, replaced by the dogma of the Sith. Palpatine's ultimate goal of eternal Sith dominance would have been realized, with Luke serving as the enforcer of his vision. While the Empire's dominance would have appeared absolute, cracks could have formed within its seemingly unshakable structure. Thrawn's pragmatic approach to governance and his disdain for the Emperor's more destructive tendencies might have created subtle tensions within the Empire's leadership. Similarly, Luke, despite his descent into darkness, might have experienced moments of doubt or conflict, particularly if confronted with remnants of his past. The galaxy under the unbroken rule of the Galactic Empire would have been a place of despair and fear, where hope had been extinguished and resistance was crushed without mercy. Palpatine, with Thrawn's strategies and Luke's power, would have created a Sith-controlled galaxy that seemed invulnerable to change. However, even in the darkest of timelines, the possibility of rebellion and redemption would have remained, buried deep within the hearts of those who refused to surrender to tyranny. Over time, the galaxy would have settled into a grim status quo under the iron grip of the Galactic Empire. Thrawn's calculated campaigns of suppression and pacification would have quelled even the faintest whispers of rebellion, while Palpatine's rule grew increasingly absolute. The vast resources of the Empire would have been directed toward consolidating power, maintaining an ever-expanding military, and pursuing dark and arcane Sith objectives. However, even in such a bleak and tightly controlled galaxy, the seeds of resistance and conflict might still have taken root. Luke Skywalker, now fully immersed in the dark side as Palpatine's apprentice, would have been a key instrument of fear and subjugation. His fall from grace, coupled with his immense power in the Force, would have created a Sith Lord of unprecedented capability. Unlike his predecessor, Darth Vader, Luke was unencumbered by physical limitations, making him a far more dynamic and terrifying enforcer. As Darth Sidious molded him into the perfect Sith warrior, Luke's exploits would have become infamous across the galaxy, further cementing the Empire's dominance. Yet, Luke's rise to power might not have been without complications. Despite Palpatine's mastery of manipulation, the latent humanity within Luke could have remained a source of tension. Haunted by fleeting memories of his former life and the ideals he once held dear, Luke might have struggled to reconcile his role as a Sith Lord with the echoes of his past. These internal conflicts, though carefully suppressed, could have created cracks in the foundation of his loyalty to the Emperor. The galaxy itself, despite its apparent submission, would have continued to harbor pockets of dissent. The Empire's oppressive policies, while effective in maintaining control, would have fueled resentment in the Outer Rim and among disenfranchised populations. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and other fringe elements might have thrived in the shadow of Imperial rule, quietly aiding isolated resistance cells or pursuing their own agendas. Though fragmented and leaderless, these small acts of defiance could have planted the seeds for a future rebellion. Thrawn, as the Empire's most brilliant tactician and administrator, would have played a critical role in maintaining stability. His pragmatic approach to governance and his disdain for wasteful displays of power would have ensured that the Empire operated efficiently. However, Thrawn's vision of order might not have aligned entirely with Palpatine's ambitions. While the Emperor sought totalitarian control fueled by fear and domination, Thrawn's methods were rooted in strategic precision and cultural understanding. This philosophical divergence, though not overt, could have introduced subtle tensions between the two. Over time, the Empire's rigid structure might have begun to strain under its own weight. The sheer scale of the galaxy, combined with the demands of maintaining control over countless star systems, would have placed immense pressure on even Thrawn's administration. Coruscant, while serving as the gleaming heart of the Empire, would have also become a symbol of its detachment from the everyday struggles of the galaxy's inhabitants. This disconnect might have given rise to underground movements seeking to reignite the spark of resistance. Meanwhile, the Force itself might have played a role in shaping the galaxy's destiny. With the Sith in full control and the Jedi eradicated, the dark side's influence would have grown unchecked. This imbalance in the Force could have had unforeseen consequences, potentially giving rise to individuals sensitive to the Force who sought to challenge the status quo. These individuals, guided by the echoes of the Jedi's teachings or driven by their own moral compasses, might have become unlikely beacons of hope in a galaxy shrouded in darkness. Palpatine, ever the schemer, would have continued to pursue his own ambitions beyond the mere consolidation of power. His experiments with the dark side, combined with his interest in immortality, might have led him to delve deeper into forbidden Sith knowledge. Luke, as his apprentice, would have been both a tool and a potential rival in these endeavors. The relationship between master and apprentice, defined by the Sith tradition of betrayal and ascension, could have introduced an undercurrent of tension between the two. If the galaxy's oppression had persisted for decades, the weight of Imperial rule might have given rise to a new generation of resistance leaders. Inspired by stories of the fallen Rebel Alliance and the sacrifices of its heroes, these individuals could have begun to organize and rally others to their cause. Smuggled hollow recordings, whispered legends, and clandestine acts of defiance might have kept the spirit of rebellion alive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Ultimately, the fate of the galaxy in this alternate timeline would have hinged on whether the forces of resistance, both external and internal, could overcome the monolithic power of the Empire. Thrawn's strategic brilliance and Luke's immense power as a Sith Lord would have made any uprising an almost impossible task. Yet history, even in the darkest of timelines, often turns on the actions of a few brave or desperate individuals. Perhaps it would have been Luke himself, grappling with the remnants of his former self, who might have emerged as an unlikely catalyst for change. Faced with the atrocities committed in the name of the Empire and haunted by visions of his father's redemption, Luke might have eventually questioned his allegiance to Palpatine. This inner conflict, combined with the growing unrest in the galaxy, could have set the stage for an epic confrontation that determined the ultimate destiny of the galaxy. In this alternate universe, the Galactic Empire's survival would have represented the triumph of order over freedom, fear over hope, and darkness over light. Yet, even in such a universe, the spark of rebellion might never have been truly extinguished, waiting for the right moment to ignite once more.